Hello and welcome everyone, I am Sanguine Rose and this is the second episode of Power and Control, my retrospective on the webtoon known as Unordinary. Last time we introduced the series off the bat with copious violence and cake as we covered the prologue and first three chapters. This time we'll be covering another three chapters. Chapter 4 starts with John arriving at the nurse's office for his broken limb, where we are introduced to Doc, the school physician. He complains about how frequently John comes to the office, which, considering the overwhelming violence around every corner, kinda makes sense, and is also a little bit unfair to him. Doc hands John a glass of green chemicals and informs him that it will take 3 hours for his arm to heal, which is crazy and importantly, for the sake of world building, not his ability. He can just make this chemical heal John's arm up in 3 hours, which is pretty awesome. John tries to leave, but is not allowed to while he's healing, probably because Doc reasonably doesn't want to have to treat him again today. With his teachers informed of his absence, we go back to the scene on the rooftop where Serafina, as was rightfully predicted, is getting a horribly written text from John asking for her help, and we see her arrive in the nurse's office a panel or two later. Sarah asks John what his text was about, which is revealed to be him complaining about boredom since he's stuck there for so long. Sarah responds with a "sucks for you lol" before going to leave for classes. John correctly calls her out on not actually going to those, and they proceed to sit around together with Sarah casually using John's lap as a leg rest, while they play Slappy Pig on their phone. John goes to brag about his new high score, to which Sarah shows hers is better. You might be asking why this game matters enough to bring up in a recap. Simply put, it's because without an ability, John gets within a 30-point gap between her score and his. And she's noted as using her ability somehow here, which we don't really know what it is, but it apparently helps with reaction times. This is a crazy feat for John, considering how strong Sarah stated and soon shown to be. Their bragging session is interrupted by Doc yelling in exasperation as the room shakes from another fight. He goes to break it up, and before he leaves, he tells them to stay put. They don't, and we cut outside, where poor Gray is getting out of a bush, likely having passed out for a few minutes, as we see John outside stretching seconds after he wakes up. Gray, understandably angry from the defenestration, immediately goes to get back at John for round 2. John tries to de-escalate the situation, pointing out his broken arm kinda makes him even. But, as you can imagine, Gray's having none of that. He goes in for another punch, which John immediately blocks with both of his arms, including, the broken one. Gray thankfully stops short, however, only now realizing that right behind John is Serafina, the final boss. John, of course, is incredibly smug that he has backup this time. Gray, showing he either has no brain cells or survival instincts, goes from the immediate surprise into insulting Sarah, saying she must not be as powerful as people say if she's hanging out with John, so maybe he is cut off mid-sentence as Serafina introduces him to the art of speed blitzing, and Gray is sent flying into the gate walls like a missile. He's clearly confused, which makes sense. Not because his head was just rammed into a stone wall, but because he didn't even see her move. Sarah warns Gray not to waste her time, which he immediately does and tries to fight back, before immediately getting knocked unconscious again for his troubles. John and Sarah then proceed to leave to go get drinks, like they didn't just knock out a motherfucker. We turn our attention to Doc, who has found the two troublemakers, Blake and Eisen, who have apparently been fighting this entire time. Doc chews them out and brings up another faculty member, Keen, who we won't be seeing anytime soon. Bickering, Blake and Eisen try to bring up a bunch of excuses, but Doc ignores them and bashes their heads in as Gray walks into the office, and by walk I mean crawl, causing Doc to curse internally, realizing John has left the office. Going back to our main duo, they are having a conversation over Boba, but before that, let's focus on the background stuff not relating to our main duo. There's a TV station making a report on the death of a superhero named Ecstatic by the hands of a group called Ember. The body was left with multiple stab wounds and a brand marking them. That is all we get for now. We will be putting a pin in this and coming back to it later. While the news is playing, John starts ranting. He's severely angry about the way the world is. Nobody talks anything out. The only thing that matters is people's power. Whether the weaker person is factually correct or not isn't even considered. Might makes right, and it makes sense John hates it having no power of his own. Sarah visibly gets agitated by his statement, and John immediately backpedals even though Sarah's agitation is literal proof of his point. However, if he had kept going, she likely would have hit him. Everything we've seen thus far has been to set up that conversation, and it's clearly supposed to be a horrible thing. They quickly follow us up with a small conversation about Ember and the dead superhero. John shows his appreciation even though Sarah dismisses the vigilante for being weak. That would be the end of chapter 6, but what's quickly asked whether that conversation about might makes right is a little too early or hammed fist. We have 300 main season episodes until the very end of season 2, and nearly 150 until the end of season 1. To have a conversation that is this important so early about everything that comes after, it's a bit forward and lacks some subtlety. However, I believe that while it definitely was too straightforward, we need it to happen this early to frame some things later on. With that said, do you disagree? Well, it's time to wrap up. I'll see you next time. So have day, do well, goodbye.